The Galactic Concord was, by all accounts, an alliance of the galaxy's most powerful species. With their combined technological marvels, intellectual sophistication, and countless millennia of history, they held sway over the stars. Earth, just emerging from centuries of war and isolation, had barely begun to take its first steps onto the galactic stage. But now, a stunning offer came: peace, unity, and prosperity. The Universal Accord, signed by hundreds of species, beckoned humanity to join them. To many, it seemed like a dream. But to diplomat Lyra Trask, the dream felt eerily like a trap. Lyra stood on the balcony of the summit of Peace's Grand Hall, gazing out at the shimmering cityscape of Averan, the heart of the Galactic Concord. The towering spires of alien architecture stretched upward like fingers of glass and metal, their surfaces shimmering with energy fields. The air buzzed with the muted hum of ships traveling through the atmosphere. For most of Earth's delegates, it was a sight to behold. For Lyra, it was a red flag. The Concord's grand ambassador, Clithar, stood beside her, his long, serpentine form wrapped in flowing silks that shimmered like stardust. His face, with its multiple glowing eyes and elaborate tattoos, exuded an air of serene authority. He was the perfect symbol of what the Concord represented. A creature of elegance and power, wrapped in a veneer of peace. But there was something about Clithar's eyes, cold and calculating, watching everything and everyone, that made Lyra uneasy. The peace we offer, Miss Trask, is the future of the galaxy, Clithar said, his voice smooth and melodic, like a snake charmer's lullaby. For all species, the path forward is through unity. Together, we shall prosper. Lyra didn't flinch at his words, but she couldn't shake the feeling that they were more of a command than an offer. She knew the galaxy, and she knew what peace under the Concord really meant. Lyra had read the reports, the covert intelligence gathered from various systems that had previously resisted the Concord's overtures. Civilizations that had declined to join or questioned the terms had vanished without a trace. Whole species wiped out, planets erased. The Concord spoke of peace, but their peace was always built on domination. Unity through submission. Lyra muttered under her breath, just loud enough for Clithar to hear. He paused, his many eyes narrowing, as if considering her words, before responding with a smile that didn't quite reach his gaze. Ah, but submission is not what we ask. We ask for cooperation, for the benefit of all. Lyra felt a cold shiver crawl down her spine. She could sense the hidden meaning beneath the surface, the subtext that no one dared speak aloud. It was a lie. This peace would come with conditions: the dissolution of Earth's military, the erasure of its autonomy, and the establishment of permanent Concord oversight, a fate shared by countless worlds before them. But Lyra couldn't reveal her suspicions yet, not in front of Clithar, not in the heart of his domain. She had to get back to Earth, to warn them, to make them understand that the Concord's peace would be humanity's enslavement. As she turned to leave, Clithar's voice stopped her. Remember, Ms. Trask, the Concord does not tolerate dissent. His words hung in the air, heavy and ominous. Lyra's heart raced, but she forced herself to remain calm. The message was clear. Earth had to make a choice: kneel before the Concord, or risk the galaxy's wrath. The moment humanity said no, the galaxy would learn that some species would rather die free than live in chains. Lyra's shuttle cut through the deep black of space, the lights of the distant stars a cold, distant reminder of the galaxy's vastness. Her mind raced, replaying Clithar's words over and over. Unity through submission. Earth had been warned for years that the Galactic Concord was not as benevolent as it appeared. But now, standing at the heart of their domain, the truth had never been so clear, and it terrified her. The shuttle docked back in Earth's orbit, the metallic clang echoing through the hull as the bay doors sealed shut. Lyra's stomach churned as she prepared herself for the hard conversation ahead. She had no time to waste. With a single motion, she activated her encrypted communicator, sending a secure transmission to General Elena Merrick. leader of Earth's unified command. General Merrick, it's worse than we thought. The Concorde's offer isn't just a trap. It's a nightmare. Lyra's voice crackled with urgency. She leaned over the communication console, typing out the data she had managed to gather during her time in the Concorde's capital. In the quiet moments of diplomacy, when the alien leaders assumed she wasn't paying attention, Lyra had learned more than she'd ever hoped to. The enlightened custodians, an enigmatic faction within the Concorde, held the galaxy in an invisible grip. It wasn't just control through politics or military might. It was psychological warfare. The custodians didn't simply enslave. They reprogrammed. Planets that had rejected the Concorde had seen their populations reduced to mindless drones or simply wiped out, their existence erased like the pages of a forgotten book. But there was more. The custodians weren't just an enforcer class. They were the architects of the Concorde's peace. They operated in the shadows, behind the scenes, manipulating every step of the Concorde's expansion. And the most chilling part, they had their eyes set on Earth. Lyra's hand shook as she sent the final piece of evidence, intercepted communications between Concorde officials discussing the necessary removal of Earth's leadership if they rejected the offer. It wasn't just a peace treaty. It was a declaration of war. Humanity wasn't being offered a seat at the table. They were being marked for extinction. As she sent the transmission, her mind flashed back to the fleeting moment on Averan, when Clither's cold eyes had locked onto hers. They had known, she thought. They were already watching us, waiting for the right moment to strike. Within seconds, General Merrick's face appeared on the screen. Her expression was grim but composed, the sharpness of her military background evident in the way her eyes scanned the data. "Lyra," she said, her voice low but steady, "we suspected something like this, but we had no idea how deep it went." Merrick paused, then leaned forward. "You're saying the custodians have been behind the scenes all along, that they've been using the Concorde as a facade to control entire systems?" Lyra nodded. "Exactly. Every species that's refused has disappeared. Every world that tried to defy them has been erased or absorbed into the Concorde under peaceful terms. The moment we say no, we're marked for destruction." There was a long silence as Merrick processed the information. Then, with cold finality, she said, "We can't let Earth fall into their hands. It's time to take the gloves off." Lyra's breath caught. She had feared it would come to this, but hearing it from the general made it feel real. "What are you proposing?" "We've been preparing for this, Lyra. We have a contingency plan. You were the first to warn us. Now we'll make sure Earth isn't just another victim. We'll fight." Lyra's heart hammered in her chest. Earth was no longer simply facing an unwanted peace treaty. They were about to face war on a scale they'd never imagined. And somewhere, out there in the stars, the custodians were watching. And they were about to realize that humanity's defiance had only just begun. "You said." The decision was made. Earth had rejected the peace offer, and the message had been sent across the galaxy. Humanity would not kneel. There was no going back. General Elena Merrick stood at the head of the unified command, staring at the holographic display projected across the war room. Earth's defenses had been bolstered, its assets reassigned. The battle would come quickly, and it would be brutal. The custodians would not take kindly to rejection. "Prepare for the worst," Merrick said, her voice calm but with the weight of an iron resolve. "We don't know the full extent of their retaliation, but we know one thing. They'll strike first, and they'll strike hard." Lyra Trask stood beside her, her hands shaking despite her attempts to remain composed. They had expected this, yes, but the reality was something else entirely. Earth was about to be pulled into a war with an enemy far older, far more powerful, and far more ruthless than anything humanity had ever faced. And yet, as Lyra gazed out at the massive table filled with military and political leaders, she saw the same determination reflected in their faces. Earth would not go down without a fight. The meeting was a blur of military jargon, tactics, and strategies, but one phrase kept echoing in Lyra's mind. "We're not just defending Earth. We're defending every world the custodians have crushed, every species they've enslaved. Humanity's rejection wasn't just a refusal to join the Concord, it was a declaration of war for the entire galaxy. It wasn't just Earth's battle anymore. There were systems that had sent encrypted messages of support, planets that had been forced into submission by the custodians who were now watching Earth closely. Some of these species had waited for a spark of defiance, a sign that it was possible to resist. Earth had provided that spark. Now, they would stand together, or they would all fall alone. As the meeting came to a close, a fleet of custodian warships appeared on the outer edge of the Sol system. The ships were vast and monstrous, their dark, gleaming hulls cutting through space like shadows. They were relentless, methodical, and calculated, an impenetrable force. Merrick's fingers danced over the controls, calling up the latest intelligence reports. There were no surprises. The custodian ships were equipped with weapons that could level entire continents with a single strike, shields capable of absorbing hits from every known type of energy weapon. They were a force to be reckoned with. But humanity had something the custodians didn't: unpredictability. Earth had spent decades developing unconventional technology and tactics. Merrick's eyes flicked over to a small private section of the display where the Titan-class orbital hammer project was listed. It was Earth's most ambitious weapon, an experimental device capable of delivering devastating kinetic strikes that could obliterate even the most heavily fortified targets. The moment was fast approaching. Merrick stood tall, her jaw set in determination. "Activate the Titan," she ordered, her voice unwavering. "We fight back now, or we never get another chance." Lyra nodded, her mind racing with the weight of the choice. Earth's response would be swift, but it would also be decisive. There was no room for hesitation. If they struck first, they might send a message the custodians couldn't ignore. They might survive. The air was thick with the tension of 1,000 possibilities. As Merrick turned to Lyra, her expression softened for a moment, the first crack in her otherwise steely demeanor. "Lyra, I need you to stay in contact with the fleet. You've seen the truth. You know what's at stake. Make sure they know Earth is prepared to burn for this." Lyra swallowed hard, fighting the urge to tremble. "I'll make sure they know. But we have to keep our humanity in this. If we become like them, we've lost already." Merrick's gaze met hers, an unspoken understanding passing between them. The fight wasn't just for survival. It was for the soul of humanity itself. And as the first wave of custodian ships descended on Earth, the countdown began. There would be no turning back. The first strike came like a thunderclap in the void. The custodians didn't waste time with negotiations. They'd come to wipe humanity off the map, and they would do it quickly. As Earth's defenses scrambled into action, the custodian fleet descended like a storm, their massive warships gliding effortlessly through space with the terrifying precision of a well-oiled machine. On Earth's surface, the global alarms blared, and military personnel raced to their stations. The air was thick with anxiety, but there was a cold determination in the air as well. General Merrick stood on the command deck, her gaze fixed on the holographic projection of the Sol system. Her fingers were steady as she gave orders, guiding humanity's response with the efficiency of someone who had seen too much war, yet never stopped fighting. The Titan-class orbital hammer was the last resort. A planet-killer weapon, its primary purpose had been to strike back at an enemy that had no regard for peace. Earth's scientists had spent years perfecting its targeting systems, and now it was humanity's only chance. "Activate the hammer," Merrick said, her voice cold. "Target the lead custodian ship." The deep thrum of Earth's orbital defense systems hummed through the station as the Titan came online. The weapon, built from the debris of long-forgotten battleships, was an engineering marvel. A massive mass driver positioned in Earth's upper atmosphere, it had the power to launch a high-velocity payload, shattering enemy ships with the kind of force that could rival a small asteroid. The Titan fired, sending a pulse of energy through the station, and the shot rocketed into space. The first custodian ship, a hulking fortress of metal and energy shields, flared with defensive energy just before the payload slammed into it. The force of the impact was cataclysmic. The custodian ship exploded in a blinding flash, its massive frame disintegrating into fragments scattered across the vastness of space. For a brief moment, Earth's defenders exhaled. It had worked. The Titan had destroyed one of their most advanced ships with a single shot. But that victory came with a price. The custodians retaliated almost instantly. A blistering barrage of plasma cannons and missile fire rained down from the remaining ships, slamming into Earth's moon. The lunar surface, once home to thriving colonies and research stations, erupted in a series of violent explosions. The impact was devastating, the shockwaves sending a ripple through the solar system. Merrick's eyes narrowed as the data flooded in. The custodians had just begun to respond in earnest, and Earth had already suffered a catastrophic blow. The moon was losing its orbit, the debris cloud growing larger by the minute. The destruction would cripple Earth's long-term space infrastructure. "Send the second wave," Merrick ordered, her voice steel. "We hit them now, while they're still reeling." Lyra, who had been coordinating communications, stood by the comm station. She watched the destruction unfold, her heart heavy with dread. The loss of the moon would be catastrophic, but there was no time to mourn. The war had just begun. As the second wave of Earth's retaliatory missiles launched into space, the custodian fleet quickly adapted. Their ships shifted formation, reactivating shields, and countering the barrage with pinpoint accuracy. Earth's fleet, already spread thin, was at a disadvantage. The custodians were relentless, their tactics cold and efficient. But there was something different in the air. Humanity wasn't just fighting to survive anymore. They were fighting for something more. For freedom, for the very soul of their species. The strike against Earth's moon had been a powerful statement, but it wasn't enough. Humanity had to make the custodians feel the weight of their decision to defy them. In the cold depths of space, Earth's fighters formed a defensive line, holding back wave after wave of custodian reinforcements. The battle had just begun, and there was no retreat. Earth's survival depended on one thing: resilience. As the first custodian warship exploded into a cloud of debris, Merrick's voice rang out over the comms. Humanity doesn't surrender. Not now, not ever. The war for the galaxy had begun, and Earth was no longer just a pawn in the custodian's game. Earth was the game-changer. You said. The battle for Earth's survival had quickly transformed into something far bigger, a spark that ignited the fires of rebellion across the galaxy. The custodians' brutal response to humanity's defiance had sent shockwaves through the oppressed systems under their control. While Earth continued to fend off their assault, Lyra Trask sat in a secure communications room, watching encrypted messages flood in from every corner of the galaxy. The first message came from a planet called Othera, a mining world in the far reaches of the galaxy, previously forced into Concord service. Their government had long been subjugated by the custodians, and any attempt at rebellion had been crushed underfoot. But now, for the first time in generations, the message was one of hope. "We have seen Earth's defiance," the message read. "We rise with you. Together, we will stand against the custodians." Lyra's heart raced. The next message came from a planet in the Cedron system, a world known for its warrior culture, whose people had once been enslaved by the custodians after a failed rebellion centuries ago. Their leaders, too, were ready to join the growing insurrection. The floodgates had opened, and with each transmission, Lyra felt the momentum of something far larger than Earth's fight. The galaxy, it seemed, was waking up. But it wasn't just a matter of aligning forces. The custodians, as always, worked in the shadows, using their psychic operatives to manipulate and control entire fleets, and now they were sending their most dangerous agents to infiltrate the resistance. Lyra, having witnessed the psychological and strategic prowess of the custodians firsthand, knew that it was only a matter of time before their sleeper agents would attempt to infiltrate Earth's leadership. "I've read their reports, General," Lyra said as she met with Merrick in the command center. "We need to prepare for a full-scale infiltration. Their custodian operatives can control minds, even entire fleets, and we can't trust anyone, not even our allies." Merrick's expression hardened. "We'll handle that when it comes. Right now, we need to focus on coordinating with the insurgents. If we wait too long, the custodians will crush them one by one. We need to hit them where it hurts. We need to attack their supply lines, their energy sources, and cripple their ability to maintain control over the galaxy." Earth's response was swift. Using a combination of guerrilla tactics and devastating technological advancements, the newly formed resistance cell, called the Vanguard, struck at custodian outposts scattered across known space. For the first time, a large-scale rebellion against the custodians was underway, and humanity was at its center. The Vanguard began to systematically disable key custodian systems. First came the sabotage of the central energy hub on the planet of Talvoth, a power station that supplied fuel to multiple custodian ships. Then came the sabotage of a custodian shipyard in the Ancestra system, where the construction of new warships had been taking place. Earth's intelligence operatives coordinated with insurgents, spreading misinformation to disrupt custodian fleets and buying time for larger attacks. The custodians retaliated fiercely, sending shock troops and fleets into these sectors. Entire cities on Talvoth were scorched as a warning, but it didn't matter. The rebellion had already grown too large. Lyra watched as the first successes of the resistance were broadcast across the galaxy, like a fire that spread faster than anyone could have anticipated. "General, they've been trying to suppress the truth for so long," Lyra said, her eyes flickering over the reports. "But it's happening. The custodians are losing control. This war is no longer just about Earth's survival. It's about the entire galaxy." Merrick nodded. "The galaxy is rising, Lyra. But we must remain vigilant. They won't stop until we're all crushed under their boot." The weight of the task ahead pressed down on them both. They weren't just leading a rebellion. They were trying to free an entire galaxy from the oppressive grip of an ancient empire, one that had crushed every species that had dared to defy it. But as humanity continued to strike blow after blow, Lyra couldn't shake the feeling that the true test was yet to come, and that the custodians were playing a much deeper game than anyone had anticipated. Still, the galaxy was awakening, and Earth would be the beacon that led them all toward freedom. The custodians' retaliation was swift, brutal, and calculated. For every successful strike the Vanguard made, the custodians unleashed a wave of punishment that could erase entire star systems. But the momentum had already shifted. The rebellion was growing, and with each success, more systems joined the insurgency. The custodians, despite their overwhelming power, were being stretched thin. They had underestimated humanity. Lyra sat in the command center, staring at the holographic map of the galaxy, now dotted with flashes of insurgent activity. It was a war now, a galaxy-wide conflict. Resistance cells were springing up on every planet the custodians had controlled. Every victory, no matter how small, seemed to fuel the fire of rebellion. Humanity had become the symbol of resistance, a rallying cry for all who had suffered under the custodians' iron fist. But Lyra knew that the custodians were not easily defeated. The next phase of the war was coming, and it was going to be bloodier than anything humanity had yet faced. "General, we have a problem," one of the officers said, breaking Lyra's concentration. She turned to face him. His face was grim. "We've intercepted a custodian transmission. They're preparing a massive fleet. They're assembling something big." Merrick's brow furrowed. "Big? How big?" The officer hesitated. "It's their Resurgence Armada, a fleet designed to crush any uprising. It's their last-ditch effort to stamp out the rebellion. If we don't stop it, they'll hit us hard, and Earth will be their first target." Lyra's heart sank. The Resurgence Armada was an ancient custodian project, one they had kept hidden for centuries. It was designed to be the final weapon of the custodians, a fleet so powerful that no rebellion could ever survive it. The ships were equipped with an arsenal that could vaporize entire planets. If Earth was the first target, it wouldn't just be a military defeat, it would be extinction. "We have to hit them before they strike," Merrick said, her voice like steel. "We need to find out where they're assembling this fleet, and we need to stop it before it's too late." The pressure was mounting, but there was little time for hesitation. Lyra knew the custodians wouldn't hesitate. The Resurgence Armada was their ultimate weapon, and it had one objective: total annihilation. A plan was quickly drawn up. Lyra would lead a covert mission with a small team of Earth's finest operatives. Their goal was to infiltrate the custodian stronghold, located deep within the Baltharian Nebula, and discover the precise location of the Resurgence Armada's assembly. They couldn't afford to let it come to Earth. If they could sabotage it, they might stand a chance. As Lyra prepared for the mission, she knew the risks. The nebula was a vast, treacherous region of space, and the custodians had set up a network of deep space sensors to guard against any intrusion. The mission would be a gamble, but it was their only chance to stop the Armada. "Lyra," General Merrick said quietly, stepping up beside her, "if you don't come back, you've already done more than anyone could have asked of you, but we'll fight on. The galaxy will rise, no matter what happens." Lyra met her gaze, a brief moment of connection between the two women who had come to symbolize humanity's resistance. "We'll make it back. We have to." As she boarded the sleek black shuttle that would carry her into the heart of the custodians' territory, Lyra couldn't help but feel the weight of their mission. The galaxy was watching, waiting for humanity to succeed, to bring down the custodians once and for all. But deep down, Lyra couldn't shake the feeling that this was the moment that would define everything. If they failed, the war was over. If they succeeded, it would change the galaxy forever. The shuttle's engines roared to life as it slipped into the darkness of space, the vast Baltharian Nebula stretching out before them, and the galaxy's future hanging in the balance. The Baltharian Nebula was a vast, treacherous expanse of swirling gases and gravitational anomalies, a region of space so dangerous that few ships dared to enter it. The nebula's dense clouds of ionized particles and rogue asteroids made any kind of large-scale operation almost impossible to detect. It was the perfect place for the custodians to hide their most powerful weapon, the Resurgence Armada. But it was also the perfect place for Lyra and her team to slip under the radar. Lyra stood at the front of the small shuttle, staring into the swirling void of the nebula. The darkness was almost suffocating, broken only by distant stars and the occasional flicker of debris passing by. She was surrounded by a hand-picked crew of Earth's best operatives, their faces determined but tense. They had trained for months in the most dangerous conditions, and now it was time to put it all to the test. "Status check," Lyra said over the comms, her voice steady despite the pounding of her heart. "Shuttle's holding steady. We're in the outer rim of the nebula," replied Captain Karen Vos, her second in command. A former Navy officer, Vos had been with Lyra since the beginning, and the two shared an unspoken understanding. "We've got about 2 hours before we hit the first wave of custodian detection grids." Lyra nodded. "We need to find their command center, and fast. We can't afford to be detected." The mission was simple in theory: infiltrate the custodian stronghold, discover the exact location of the Resurgence Armada's assembly, and sabotage it if possible. But in practice, it was a suicide mission. The custodians were masters of space warfare, and their sensors and defensive systems were far more advanced than anything Earth could counter. Getting in would be hard enough, but getting out without a trace was an entirely different challenge. The shuttle flew deeper into the nebula, the dense clouds of gas making navigation difficult. Lyra's eyes never left the controls as they passed through the shimmering tendrils of ionized particles, feeling the slight hum of the ship as it adjusted its trajectory. Every second felt like an eternity, but there was no turning back now. As they approached the heart of the nebula, Vos glanced at Lyra, his expression grim. The custodians will be expecting us. We won't have the element of surprise for long." Lyra's jaw tightened. "We don't need surprise. We need speed." The shuttle's cloaking system flickered for a moment, causing Lyra's pulse to spike. "Everything all right, Voss?" "Just a minor fluctuation in the cloaking field," he replied, but there was no mistaking the worry in his voice. If their ship was compromised, they would never get close enough to the custodian base to even attempt sabotage. They would be hunted down and destroyed before they could blink. Just as Lyra was about to speak, the comms crackled with static. A deep, disembodied voice echoed through the shuttle. "You are not welcome here." The voice sent a chill down her spine. The custodians had detected them. "We're too close," Voss said. "They've activated the deep space sensors. They know we're here." Lyra's fingers flew across the console. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers. Initiate Phase 2. The shuttle surged forward, skimming dangerously close to a massive asteroid cluster that spun lazily in the nebula's outer layers. The custodian fleet's pursuit was immediate, their ships darting from the nebula's depths like deadly predatory beasts. But Lyra had anticipated this. The true goal of the mission had never been simply to infiltrate. It had been to draw the custodians away from their strongest defenses, to create an opening. "Let's make it count," Lyra muttered under her breath, knowing that every move they made now was a step closer to their final chance. The shuttle twisted and turned, narrowly avoiding laser blasts that cut through the void like searing lances of light. Lyra could hear the crackling of their weapon systems on the comms, their shields straining under the constant barrage. 5 minutes to the custodian base, Voss reported, gritting his teeth. "We're almost there." Lyra nodded. "Brace for impact." With a final surge of speed, the shuttle dove toward a massive, blacked-out structure in the distance, the heart of the custodian's operations within the nebula. The time had come. The next few minutes would decide whether they lived to see another day, or whether humanity's last hope would be extinguished forever. The shuttle entered the shadow of the base, disappearing into the complex network of defensive shields. Lyra's pulse raced. They were inside now, and if they were to survive, they would need to strike fast, hard, and without mercy. In the darkness of the nebula, the future of the galaxy hung in the balance. The shuttle slipped into the heart of the custodian base like a shadow, its cloaking field masking its presence from the ever-vigilant sensors. The only sound was the steady hum of the engines and the tense breathing of the crew. Lyra felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her. They were inside enemy territory now, with no guarantee of making it out alive. "Stay sharp," Lyra said, her voice calm but firm. "We have one shot at this. Get to the central control room, sabotage the Resurgence Armada's command systems, and get the hell out. No heroics. We do this clean and quick." Captain Voss gave a curt nod. "Understood. We're with you, Lyra." The base loomed ahead, a vast structure of jagged metal and energy shields that pulsed with the unnatural rhythm of custodian technology. From what they had gathered, it was a research and operations hub, the nerve center for the custodians' plans to crush the rebellion. And buried deep within it was the command system for the Resurgence Armada, a fleet so powerful it could wipe out entire worlds. Lyra's team disembarked from the shuttle, moving through the dimly lit corridors with practiced precision. They moved like ghosts, blending into the shadows, every footstep calculated, every motion deliberate. They had to move fast. The longer they stayed, the greater the risk of being discovered. Their objective was clear: find the central data core, implant the virus they had developed to disable the Armada's fleet systems, and escape before the custodians could react. Lyra's pulse quickened as they approached the main command hub. They were getting closer, but she knew that the moment they triggered the virus, the custodians would be on them like a storm. The clock was ticking. Voss led the way, hacking into the security systems with a deftness that came from years of experience. The walls buzzed with the low hum of energy flowing through the base, a constant reminder of the custodians' unyielding power. "Done." Voles muttered, his voice tense. "We've got access." Lyra stepped forward, activating the data terminal and plugging in the device that would send the virus into the custodian network. It would scramble the Armada's command systems, rendering the fleet useless for hours, maybe longer, depending on the level of chaos they caused. It was a long shot, but it was their best hope. "Virus is deploying," Lyra said. "We've got maybe a minute before they detect it." Just as the words left her mouth, the base's alarms began to blare, and the walls shook with the heavy stomp of custodian soldiers closing in. Lyra's heart pounded in her chest as the countdown on her terminal began to tick faster. "Move out," she shouted, her voice sharp. "We've got to go now." The team sprinted down the corridors, navigating the maze-like structure with speed and precision. Behind them, the custodians were closing in, their footsteps echoing like thunder. Lyra could hear their voices, low and guttural, as they shouted orders to each other. They were coming. "Exits just ahead," Voles called. Lyra's mind raced. They couldn't let the custodians catch up to them. If they were captured, everything would be lost. The virus had to work. It had to. The team rounded the final corner. And there it was, the escape hatch, a small airlock leading to the shuttle. They were almost there. But then, a voice, the voice they had feared, echoed through the corridors. "You cannot escape," the custodian commander intoned, his voice icy and cold. "You have already lost." Lyra turned, and there he was, a towering figure in dark, ornate armor, a custodian general, his eyes glowing with the eerie light of their psychic power. The custodians had known they were coming. This had all been a trap. "Get to the shuttle," Lyra screamed, pushing her team forward. But it was too late. The custodian general raised his hand, and the air seemed to freeze around them. A psychic force slammed into Lyra's chest, knocking the breath from her lungs. She staggered, struggling to keep her footing. But then, something unexpected happened. From the shadows, another figure appeared, one of their own allies, a member of the rebellion. The soldier fired a shot that hit the custodian general square in the chest, disrupting the psychic field long enough for Lyra to regain her balance. It was only a moment, but it was enough. "Go," the rebel shouted, and the team surged forward, running for the shuttle. The airlock door slid open just as the first custodian soldiers rounded the corner. Lyra's heart raced as they piled into the shuttle, Voles already at the controls. "Go, go, go," Lyra barked as she slammed into the seat beside him. The shuttle roared to life, shooting forward just as the custodians' weapons fire cracked the air behind them. The nebula stretched out ahead like an impenetrable wall, but Lyra's mind was clear for the first time in days. The virus had been deployed. The Armada was crippled.